Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PerformHappy Podcast. I am so excited to have an NCAA D1 gymnast, All-American, one of the best bar workers in the nation, joining me today to talk about her experience as a collegiate gymnast. Sage Thompson, welcome to the show.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I've been trying to track you down all season. You've been fairly busy putting up amazing scores for Oregon State. Now I'll just dive right in and say, so 2 years, your first 2 years of college, you were at Utah. You contributed to a top three finish twice. You were on this like really prestigious, amazing, top team. And
hmm
then you transferred to Oregon State, which everyone was kind of like, oh, okay. So would you give us your little version of why that felt right to you to switch teams for your junior year?
I feel like I want to be more than just a bar worker, and I felt like I wanted more opportunity somewhere I felt like I could be my own person and just continue my growth. And I think that everywhere you learn so many things, no matter where you are. And I've learned so much, and I'm grateful for my experience at Utah and grateful for a lot of the amazing memories and things that I was able to contribute to or learn from or people. And I think it was time for me to learn somewhere else and be able to find who I was and figure out the things that work best for me. And just have more opportunity in my gymnastics to see where my potential could be, both doing gymnastics physically and mentally, how I could build my mental strength in gymnastics. And I thought it was best for me to see what opportunities were out there at a different place.
Yeah. Well, and what was it about Oregon State that got your heart? Why did you choose that school?
I think I visited amazing places and there's amazing people, and I think it was so good to make those connections and really I feel like going through the transfer process, it made me start to just by going through that process made me start to love gymnastics again because I saw and met so many amazing people and learned a lot. But I feel like I just felt so safe and calm and just like I could be myself here. Even on the visit, right when I got in the car and met the coaches, when I was on phone calls with the coaches, they just made me feel heard and seen and valued, and they just care so much about you as people. You're always a person first and a gym a second, and you could see that from literally just their presence. You don't even have to talk to them, and so that really spoke out to me, and I felt like that was what I needed in to be able to grow my gymnastics, grow as a person, and just see where what I could do with my last 2 years, and so I'm super grateful for them and all that they have done, and just for letting me be on their team. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I know from talking with a lot of athletes who are in places that are very results oriented, very results oriented. They're like all about the win, the W, like that's the most important thing. I can see that that can take a toll on mental health. And
Mhm.
I believe you can have both. That you can have a really exceptional team and a prioritization of mental health.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that? And what have you seen throughout your career as far as can you have both at the same time?
Yeah, I think that you can have both because it just depends on your approach, and I think that the best coaches can acknowledge that every single person is different and has a different perspective and journey, and they grew up different, they handle things differently, they hear things differently or interpret it differently. So coaches who are able to figure out how to motivate a gymnast while still giving them expectations and helping them bloom into their potential are the best coaches because they'll see you as a person, they'll see you as a gymnast, but they'll still have expectations of you, and they'll still be able to let you know the hard things. Sometimes you need to hear the hard things and you need to learn them, but it's how you present it to them. So coaches who are able to make the gymnasts feel valued as they hand out their expectations, or maybe tell them a hard thing, or let them know how much they care about them, it really helps the gymnast feel seen. And then it will make them hear what they want as results. And I think expectations are actually a really flattering thing because it means you're trusted enough to achieve the great things I think you can, and so that no one is settling. So I just think it's flattering to have expectations from a coach who really values you as a person and a gymnast. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
can go.
Expectations can be complicated though. I know expectations are one of the main things from my experience that get in the way of self-trust. That when
Yeah.
you're like, it has to be good, it has to be perfect, I have to hit it, or else it can create like a kind of a future perspective
Mhm.
where the best gymnastics is only ever in the moment.
Yeah.
How do you balance that knowing, okay, this coach wants me to get a 10 right
Yeah.
now, and I'm human? Like, how do you stay present even when you do have those kind of like flattering high expectations on you?
Mhm. I feel like it's kind of funny because sometimes I feel like I have harder expectations on myself than other people do of me, but I'm just trying to my coach Tanya talks a lot about staying in the moment and really trusting your technique, trusting your breathing, and just knowing that we all are learning and we're students of the sport. We aren't the sport. So every time you take a turn, you ask yourself, "Oh, how did I learn from that?" Or every time you have an expectation, it's like, "Oh, how did I learn from that? How did I if I didn't reach that expectation, what did I learn? What can I change to reach that expectation of both myself and my coaches?" And then you can talk to your coaches. I think having an open communication with them and being able to have a coach that you can have open communication with them is really important. If you don't, then I think different conversations need to be had, but being able to have conversations and asking them what their expectations are and then saying what your expectations are of yourself and kind of coming up with what can be the most helpful. What if you have a day where you're super off and you need to just talk through things and say, "Hey, I can only give my 10% today, but I'm going to give 100% to that 10%." Coaches are going to respect that a lot, and I think it's going to lead you to respect yourself and respect your process. And I think it's that way it's fun to let the load off of expectations because you know that if you give 100% to what you can give that day, it's always going to be okay and you're always going to learn something from it. I don't even know if I
Mhm.
answered that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, that's like,
what was
that's the
my
way that I think people overcome performance anxiety is to
Mhm.
go, hey, I'm going to put it all out there, whatever I've got today. And
Yeah.
however it goes, I'm going to learn. And if you have, that's the ultimate growth mindset where you're like, I'm not a robot. I'm not perfect. I'm trying to hit perfect routines. Yes, granted. But when I don't, I'll go back and I'll work this little moment in my routine. And
And I th oh, you can
yeah, no,
go.
it's gonna make me better. Like every
Yeah.
one of those little moments where you look back and go, dang it, that's what you go and you drill harder in the gym. So it's actually part of success is those
Mhm.
wobbles.
Yeah, because I think one thing that also Tanya says, and I've just been working on, is you don't really learn when you're perfect. If you go out and do a perfect routine, you're still probably gonna feel like you could have done more, but if you go out and do your cricket and somehow you don't wobble, or you do the most weird punch on beam and you still stick the dismount, you're like, "Wow." You're you're just so happy that you put it all out there and that you learned how to adjust, because if you never had to learn to adjust because 'cause you're perfect every time, then it almost wouldn't be fun.
Okay, so let's go back to like the healthy gymnast who feels safe. What and
Mhm,
like you talk about how they know how to motivate you in a way that works for you. That's
mhm,
everybody's different. Some kids, like, they actually really want somebody to ride them and to like
mhm.
demand perfection from them.
Yeah,
Some, I'm going to say a minority, like a
yeah.
tiny sliver of people are like,
Mm,
I function best when somebody's riding me and like really pushing hard. I think the majority are not that way. So
yeah.
based on the best coaches that you've had, who's been able to unlock that motivation in you that allows you to get out of your comfort zone and up to your full potential, and how do they do it?
Um, I honestly feel like just having someone believe in me has always been really helpful. I feel like I've always been very self-motivated to do things, but sometimes I need the extra push, and that extra push is just belief. And that can look like sometimes even just as simple as a smile and nod, or Tanya before I get up on beam. And beam is something that I'm really wanting to learn more from and on for next year, but she'll just look at me and give me knuckles and nod and just be, "You can only make this better." Because in reality, say you get up there and you fall, you're still counting a score that's better than a 0, and I just think basically being told that you've put in the work, just something motivational, like, "You've put in the work. Remember why you do this. Remember when you were a little girl and you just love the sport. You wanna do cartwheels all day long," and I'd, like, kick my brothers on accident or my mom or something, because I just loved cartwheels. So just remembering that feeling and having the coaches remind you of that feeling, I think is really helpful to make you motivated, like, "Oh, yeah, the little girl in me would be so impressed by what I could do now, and the little girl in me would want me to try this because I have the opportunity to try it." And so coaches who can kind of unlock that in you, I think are really helpful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I just got kicked in the face by my 9-year-old doing handstands like the other day. She's constantly like, I
Oh,
have to be like, no handstands on the stairs, no handstands in the living room. Okay, okay.
oh my
Just
god.
can't help it when you love it, when you just want to be
Yeah.
upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, everything is a beam.
Yeah. Oh gosh, every curb, every line, yeah, absolutely. I still am like, I have to balance on the wall. It's like in
That's
me.
so funny.
So, okay, little Sage. Let's talk about little Sage. Now um you and your brothers lost
Mhm,
your dad at a young age, which is like, oh, like I'm daddy's little girl. That is like so, so heartbreaking. But
mhm.
he said something to you, right? Like I remember hearing that never give up was something that came from him. Could you tell us like where that
Yeah.
came from?
Um, I think that my family has had a lot of trials and adversity, and we have a cancer gene that runs in the family, so we just have a lot of people that pass away from cancer, and my dad was a part of that. And we're super lucky because we don't have the cancer gene, me and my brothers. Um, but I think he never gave up. He always pushed through, and same with my mom. My mom, I think after my dad passed away, my mom was always there for us, and basically my mom always put us before herself and just always pushed through things, and then she ended up getting cancer, and she fought so hard. She always fought so hard for us, and I think that was inspiring, as in the never give up was both from both of my parents, because they're very committed to their kids and very committed to being the best parent that they can, and what my dad could do at the time, and that's just inspired me to become the best person that I can be and the best that I can be for others, and to always be there for others and help them through hard times, and really just figure out how to better myself, and they just inspired me a lot. and I think my dad just fought so he didn't have to fight as hard as he did. He was given, like, 3 weeks to live when he got diagnosed
Wow.
from cancer, and he ended up living 8 months, and he actually was in remission. He went through all of his cancer process where he got chemo, he got a bone marrow transplant because he had leukemia, and then he's finally in remission for 50 days and relapsed and had to go through all of it again, and it was just too much on his body and ended up passing away, but he didn't have to fight as hard as he did, and he still chose to fight for us and himself. So that just
Mm.
inspires me whenever I'm, like, sick or hurting, I'm just thinking, "Well, my dad pushed through so much more pain than this, and he did it for us, so I can push through this." Obviously, in a healthy way, I'm not gonna push through
Yeah.
something that's gonna harm me, but just
Mm.
pushing through hard times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, what an inspiration. Oh my gosh, and I just can't even imagine when your mom gets diagnosed, what, 4 years later with breast cancer?
Mhm.
I would have
Yeah.
been, like, so mad. Like, "This is not
Yeah.
fair." Did you have any of that, reaction, and how did you get through it?
I think that it was just confusing to me, and it just made me, I guess, angry in a way, but not angry at cancer, not necessarily angry at the situation, just because my mom comes from a huge family. She has 3 other siblings, but my grandma has 5 siblings, and my grandpa has 13 siblings. And my mom is the only one out of every single one of them that has gotten cancer, and of course, it was her after my dad had passed away, and after we've had, like, I think 13 family members pass away from cancer. Well,
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't feel fair, but somehow you were
oh,
able
yeah,
to just get in and keep
yeah,
doing gymnastics and keep showing up for your family, and
yeah. So, when my dad I'll say go back to when my dad passed away, I think gymnastics really helped me get through it and helped give me a purpose in a way of, "I'm gonna get in here, I'm gonna fight hard because my dad loved watching my gymnastics, and I'm gonna do whatever I can." He didn't want us to quit. He said, "Don't quit your sports." That's what he said. Because he wanted us to continue to grow and learn from our sport, and, of course, he wouldn't want us to if we were miserable. He would want us to maybe take a step back if we were miserable, but then when my mom got sick, I personally have faith in just God, knowing that God has got me and got our family, and that he can always be by our sides, and there's always a lesson to learn in something, and sometimes you don't wanna learn it, but you kinda have to, and so I kinda just had to trust that everything was gonna be okay and lean on God and my family around me. My grandma helped us a lot, and I got even closer to her than I was, and it still didn't feel fair, but I just knew in my heart that it was gonna be okay because my mom was a fighter, and I honestly believe that there's no way that something would happen because that way, I think it would have a completely different story, but I just had faith that everything was gonna be okay and prayed for my mom, prayed for her family, and just wanted to be there for her in whatever way I could as a 15-year-old. So,
whew,
yeah.
yeah, that's a lot on a teenager. So, I mean, of course, you come out crazy resilient. Ah, man, but were there ever any moments where you wanted to quit, where you wanted to walk away? What brought
Yeah,
that on?
well, I actually did quit for, like, 6 months. No one really knows that, I guess, but I just maybe it was 4 months, around there. I hurt my back. I had something called Par's defect, where you have little stress fractures on both sides of your vertebrae, the same side, and if they fracture, your vertebrae can shift out of place, and you have to get surgery on it, and it wouldn't go away, and I was trying to take time off, and it wasn't really healing, so I just was like, "I don't wanna be in this much pain," and kinda stopped gymnastics for a little bit, but my mom was smart and would just sometimes bring me to open gym for me to maintain my skills and just kinda have fun with it. And then I just realized, well, I love the sport, it's so much fun and I miss it. And my back was starting to get better. I went to the doctor and it was starting to heal, but I still have had back problems since I was like 9, but that's just a part of gymnastics anyways. Um, I think that I've gone through lots of phases where I hated the sport. I never quitted, but I just hated the sport because either maybe things weren't going the way I wanted them to, or I was just in a lot of pain, or maybe it's going through just a difficult time or dealing with things that I didn't want to have to deal with. I think everyone has those moments. Or just not knowing, sometimes I wouldn't know how to communicate things, and that would make things worse. So all of that has helped me kind of figure out what my body needs, what I need to communicate, and that's helped me learn love gymnastics again, is accepting that I can't control a lot of things, but I can control my mindset. I can control that, yes, if my body hurts, I can do something about it. I don't just have to suffer in silence, and maybe the pain isn't going to go away, but I can at least do something about it. And just leaning on people who I know can help me because I always go back to when I was a little girl. I love the sport, and I do love the sport because honestly, it's all I think about. I just love watching videos. I love watching technique of people, and I just love doing gymnastics. I love the idea of it, and I love doing it. So that's always brought me back whenever I struggled with liking the sport.
Yeah, it seems like all of the highest level gymnasts that I've hung out with,
Mhm.
that's the underlying thing is that their why is there, and that why is because I love it. And they have
Mhm.
sort of this vision of what they want for their sport career, and that
Mhm.
powers them through the hard times. Now, if you think about the times you hated gymnastics,
Mhm.
if you could change something internally or externally, like if you could time travel back to those moments where you hated it the most,
Mhm.
what would you change in order to keep that love more in the forefront?
Um, One, I feel like communicating more because you should always use your voice even if you're not heard. Because sometimes if you say it enough times, that it'll be heard somewhere. So using my voice more, just whether it's, I don't know, an opinion of something about an assignment of, oh, I feel like this will really help me with this assignment, just adding on this, or maybe my body just really is hurting today and I need today to do 3 instead of 5 or something like that, and so I would ignore it for basically as long as possible until it made it so I physically couldn't do gymnastics anymore, and so I think obviously communicating and knowing that it's okay to communicate, it's okay to hurt, and then also letting go of all of the pressures of both from myself and from others because it just takes the fun out of it. And letting go of I have to be this, I have to be perfect. Oh, if I don't do this, this person is going to hate me or this person isn't going to like me. And I feel like if you're in an environment where that happens, where someone truly won't like you because you did something, you made a mistake, then you shouldn't be in that environment. And it's really hard because sometimes that happens and you don't even realize it. But I don't know, I just think it's important to have a lot of self-reflection and reflect on your environment and figure out what works for you. Basically, just standing up for myself, having a voice, and taking out so many of the outside pressures from others and the inside pressure of myself, and just trusting that I love the sport and I do work hard and that I have an opportunity that so many people would kill to have. They would just being on a D1 team is a huge opportunity that you don't realize how amazing that is. And even going to school is an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. So taking full advantage of the opportunity in whatever way you can is really helpful to be like, oh, actually, I have so much that I can do. And so many people would love to have this. So just making the most of it, and that helps you kind of fall in love with it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Well, the gratitude,
Mhm.
gratitude is so empowering because you can, and you talked about this where, if you fall on a routine that's counted, at least it wasn't a zero. It's that
Yeah,
you're looking at the bright side. You're like, okay, it wasn't a 99725, but it was also not a zero. So you can
yeah,
look at either side. And then when you look at the side of, well, hey, it could have been worse, it just
yeah,
feels better, more
yeah.
empowering.
And you can look at that side and not that doesn't mean you dismiss that it happened. That doesn't mean, well, it's fine that it happened because it's important to learn from it and acknowledge that it happened, and that is giving yourself grace, but I think no one wants to keep falling and being like, "Oh, it's fine. It's fine." But having that as just a way of giving yourself grace and taking the softening the blow a little bit, but still being motivated to or using that as motivation is, "I'm not gonna let that happen again. I'm gonna
Mm.
do whatever it takes to get more confidence on that scale." If that means every single day I need to do a pressure routine in front of the whole team, then that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do whatever it takes so I won't make the mistake again, but knowing that if that were to happen, that you still gave it your all and it still counted for something. So not
Yeah.
using that as an excuse or a, "Oh, well, it's fine because it still counted," but using it as at least giving yourself grace and something to be proud of, but still being motivated for more.
Yeah. And I think that's the trouble with perfectionism, like maladaptive perfectionism, where
Mm,
people never feel good enough. So what you're
mhm,
saying is you're not taking your foot off the gas completely and being like, who cares? I'm gonna go get a 5 on beam because whatever. I'm so like go with the flow.
yeah,
It's I think for a perfectionist, you can afford to take your foot off the pressure
mhm,
pedal a little bit and
yeah,
still be incredible. And then
mm,
also still have a positive relationship with yourself where you
mhm,
go, oh gosh, that was not ideal. All right, let's go. Let's use this as motivation. Let's go. Like, get me to beam,
yeah,
coach. I got work to do.
yeah,
And you can have self-compassion and go, okay, that was not how I was hoping it would go.
yeah,
This feels disappointing. Let's go get him. Come on, this is not the end. Let's go get back
yeah,
to work. You can be kind to yourself and have high expectations
yeah,
and still work hard without having to feel like, oh no, I'm the scum of the earth because I made a mistake.
yeah,
You can
and just knowing you didn't go up there to fall. You didn't get on the beam and be like, "Oh, I feel like falling today."
balance.
You just
Take that, team.
yeah. Sometimes that stuff happens and you just have to learn how to navigate that and use it to make it so it will be less likely to happen the next time.
Mm,
Even though it's hard not to feel emotional about it, and it's okay to acknowledge those things. It's okay to acknowledge your emotions and acknowledge your scary thoughts or acknowledge the expectations, but it's also okay to just let those go and stay present in the moment because ultimately no one can do gymnastics for you. You're doing it, so just staying present through each and everything that you do just helps because you can still acknowledge a thought and be like, "Oh yeah, I had the thought I was gonna fall. I'm gonna be fine." Just stuff like that can be helpful,
yeah,
at least for
yeah.
me. Because on bars, a ton, I would be like, "What if I fell on my cast or something?" Which never happened, but I could let it happen, but I just like, "Oh, that's funny. I'm gonna be fine. All I have to do is trust my technique and stay in the moment, and then I end up doing that and doing a good bar routine. Whereas on beam is what I struggled with this year is I would get up and say, "Oh, what if I fell on my flick lay? Or what if I fell on my leap?" And then I ended up falling on that skill, and that was really hard for me because I was like, "Oh, I'm doing a self-fulfilling prophecy." I'm, like, saying, "What if I fall?" and then falling on that skill. So I tried to learn, and I'm still learning of how to be acknowledging it because every event is different to me mentally. Kind of taking it on as how I do bars is acknowledging that the thought's there, but knowing, "No, I know how to do this, and I can trust my technique, and it's gonna be okay, it's gonna happen."
Yeah.
And
Well, it's going back to the controllables that
mhm,
I believe you can't always control that first thought. That what if thought,
mhm,
it's part of our survival instinct. It's like, what if you get eaten by a tiger? It just is like, whoa, hello thought. Where did you come from?
yeah.
And you're really good on bars at being like, "Oh, that's hilarious. Okay,
Yeah,
anywho, I already made so many of these. We're good to go." So, but
mhm,
you're doing the right process of rewiring your brain for positivity where you acknowledge it. You're like, "Oh, I see you thought. I see you
yeah,
there." And then you kind of like freeze frame on it and go, "All right,
yeah,
we're going to stabilize this thought and be like, okay, I have a what if." And
mhm,
then you get into, well, what would be a more productive focus right now in the moment? What can I do right now that's going to make this feel better? And you're like,
mhm,
okay, square, hands, whatever your cues are,
yeah,
and off I go. And then you don't have to take them so seriously.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
the
I
the
like what
times
you
when
said.
you're hitting beam, what usually works? What is your thought process when your beam is like cannot miss?
Um, I honestly think those are the moments where I wasn't thinking about anything else, like, I wasn't thinking about what I had to do, I wasn't thinking, "What if this happens?" Or if I did, I would just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna make it. I know I'm gonna make it." I would just get up there and know what was gonna happen, and I'd do what was gonna happen. But there's the times I walked up with a question mark and let that question mark stay the whole routine is when I fell. But I'm still learning what's best for me. I'm still in that process. I started
Yeah.
singing a song, and I feel like that's been helping me. And because I'll tend to overthink a lot, and those are the routines that were harder. But instead, just having my little cues and
Mhm.
saying those things, but then the rest of my routine, I'm like counting, or I'm singing a song, or I'm just thinking about a random memory or something. That has really helped me because a few of the times when I fell, I would like hit the routine so good, and I'd be on my last skill, and I'd be like, "Oh, all I have to do is just hit this skill, and then I'll get this," and then I'd fall, and it would be on something I would never ever make a mistake on in practice. So I realized, "Oh wow, I really need to stay present and just know it's not over until it's over." So just saying all my cues, singing a song, counting, stuff like
Mhm.
that. But I will say I'm still in the process of learning, but I think I've made some progress. And
Yeah.
I've had to navigate my mindset on all the other events because I'm only used to doing it on bars, and I didn't really train beam and floor for the past 3 years. So, I think it's kinda learning how to do it again and learning how to compete it again, and that was this year, so I'm excited for next year to kinda use this year as a building block. And
Yeah. Well, that's when you've been talking about like the failures turning into successes that you go, oh my gosh, I need to have my mind choreographed through the entire routine.
yeah.
Good to
Mhm.
know. And once you do, and like just a little like for anyone out there who can relate, which is probably every single human who's ever competed on beam, you're like, oh, my mind just left me for that 1 second and I was
Yeah.
down. You
Mhm.
you just choreograph it, and the way you choreograph it is the same way you create a pre-performance routine by reflecting on the best routines you hit. You go, "Okay, what was I paying attention to here? What was I paying attention to here?" And I like to write out a
Yeah.
bullet point list of all the skills and all the poses and just go, "Okay, what's the most important focus here? What's the most important
Mhm.
focus here?" And if you're like, "No, I can trust this skill in my sleep," then yeah, like counting can be great. Or
Yeah.
like an audio learner is going to be singing or counting or saying something to
Mhm.
themselves. A visual learner is going to be like seeing the beam, seeing the hands, seeing, something at eye level.
Yeah.
A kinesthetic learner is going to be like feeling the squeeze, feeling the square, feeling the
Mhm.
impact, feeling the pressure. Do you have one that sounds more like you?
I feel like I'm more of a visual slash feel, like a mix, because on certain skills, it's all about how it feels, and certain
Mhm.
skills, I have to be looking, and if I don't look at the beam, I mess up. So, like, on
Yeah.
my side sumi, I have to look at my foot the entire time, like the foot that's landing first, and if I don't do
Mhm.
that, then it's usually a little bit wonky.
Yeah. Well, this is a great example because for you, a song could be helpful, but I would
Mhm,
actually have you do more kinesthetic, like feeling clues and more visual
mhm,
clues, and have it be like it's not like I'm audio, so I was like wrist and kick and point 1, 2. I was like saying a whole thing the whole time. But
mhm.
some people, they need to focus in somewhere else. So you look back and go, whoa, that was the best routine I've ever done. Okay,
Yeah,
where were my eyes? What did it feel like? And
yeah,
then you focus on that throughout the whole
yeah,
routine and you'll
yeah,
reproduce it.
I like that. I feel like it's learning how to do that both in practice and under pressure, because I think where I'm at is I end up doing different things in practice and under pressure, and not just gymnastics-wise, but just thought process, visual, feeling,
Mhm.
all of that stuff, so keeping it the same. And when I think back on in JO, and I guess that's where I was very consistent on being, I didn't really make mistakes much. Um, which is funny because I have a lot of fail videos, but a lot of them are in warm up because my mom would record my warm up in case I like crash, because I'd always crash in my warm up and then be fine and I compete. But anyways, sometimes
YouTube
if
loves the crash videos. Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes I wouldn't remember what I did. Because I'd be so focused on what I had to do and I'd be so locked in, but that I would land and I'd be like, "Wait, what did I just do?" Kinda when you're
Mhm.
driving and you get there and you're like, "How did I just get to my destination?" That's
Yeah.
sometimes what I would do, and I'm still trying to figure out what was my thought process during that, and I think a lot of it was turning my brain off and just letting my body go into autopilot
Yeah.
and knowing that it's gonna know what to do.
Totally. Yeah. Well,
But
and
oh,
self-trust and those flow experiences where you land and you're like, "Whoa, what just happened?" And like time slows down and you're so
yeah.
in control. Those
Yeah.
like epic moments where you're like, "This is the best thing I've ever done in my life. Don't I want to do that routine every day forever?"
Yeah.
That only happens when you're completely locked in on the present moment, 100%. If you
Mhm.
think, "Oh, my next connection is coming," boom, you're out of your flow. Or if you're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, last time I fell on this," you're in the past, so you're out of your flow. If you're like, "Oh my gosh, people are watching me," like if you get self-conscious, out of your
Mhm.
flow. So it's training, okay, what's the one most important thing that I can be doing in this moment? Like I watched Shilese Jones. I don't know why this stands out. She did a turn and like bobbled a little bit maybe a year ago. And I was like, "Oh, she's locked right back into her focus so fast. Like
Yeah.
nobody would even see that bobble unless they're a gymnast, or a
Yeah.
judge. Like, bam,
Mhm.
she's locked in so quick because she knows exactly where to get back to if anything goes weird. It's just,
Mhm.
it's so cool. And so for anybody out there, it's like you find the way to be present and
Yeah.
connected to your body, usually, like, out of your head and into your body, especially as a kinesthetic learner, you're just in your
Yeah.
body and flow will happen. Well, ooh,
Yeah.
this will be a
I
fun
love that.
off season for you to, like, get really clear on, "Okay, when I'm doing great, where's my attention? Where am
Yeah.
I?" And
Mhm.
then you can figure out, "Okay, this is my list of things I focus on." You train your routines with that kind of actively in
Mhm.
your mind, and then by the time you go compete, it's like background noise. It's like that background set
Mhm.
of cues, and you're just flowing through.
Yeah.
Ooh, so
That's
exciting.
hard.
It's gonna be a fun senior year. Yay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, just to wrap up,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to somebody out there who is like the 12-year-old who
Mhm.
just wants to be perfect, but is feeling like they're not being heard by their coach? What do they do? Because I know that's such a big, important part of you feeling confident as a gymnast.
Yeah. Um, I feel like I've learned a lot that I just have to confront my fears and face them head on and know that sometimes it may not go your way, but be confident in yourself that you know you tried. So starting up, the coach is gonna respect you a lot by just going up to them and telling them how you feel, at least from my point of view, and every single person is different, but honestly, I think if someone comes up to you and is like, "Here's what I'm struggling with, what can I do?" Or, "I feel like when this was said, I this is how I felt." So it's like not saying you said this and you said this, but saying when this was said, this is how I felt. Kind of approaching that with a coach, I think would be really helpful because then the coach will honestly develop more respect for you and realize, wow, she really is just trying to communicate. And then they'll probably hear you more and comprehend it more because it was a respectful conversation. And then they'll probably start to communicate more with you as you go and ask you questions and sometimes even ask your coach questions. If you don't understand what your coach is saying, ask them. Like if the coach is saying, if you're hurt and the coach is still making you do it, you can ask them a question and be like, could I at least try one more? And if it still is in a lot of pain, could I do something else that would still be beneficial and would help me with my gymnastics but keep my body
Mhm.
healthier? Or approaching a lot of things, asking a question and approaching things with curiosity because then it won't make it seem like you're just, no, I'm right and you're wrong. You're just kind of openly communicating things. And it's hard to do. You have to practice it and you have to learn it, but the only way you can do that is by starting.
Yes. Yes, that makes me think of even like a little 6-year-old can be like,
Mhm.
"Coach, when you've used that nickname, it hurts my feelings." You
Yeah.
know, just something like you can start right now, no matter if you're a level 10 or a level 3, you can say, "Coach, when I hit the board like that, it kind of hurts my foot." You can
Yeah.
just sort of like start letting them know, and you
Mhm.
can build that muscle to the point where you can say, "You know, when this was said, I felt totally worthless, and like this fault feels impossible to me after that
Yeah.
statement." I mean, to be able to share that kind of feedback with a coach can be huge for the relationship because a lot of the times they're like just being sarcastic or funny, and you're like, "Ugh, that did not sit right with me." So to be able to share that helps everybody, I would say. Oh,
Yeah. I hope that it resonates with people, and I think it doesn't have to be just a coach, but just people in your life, because I think gymnastics, you can learn so many lessons in it that are gonna take you on to the rest of your life because really that's what it's setting you up for what you're gonna be outside of the sport.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, Sage Thompson, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Much.
sharing your experience with us, and I'm so excited to root for you next season at Oregon State. Thank you for coming.
I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for listening, and thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.